The Galactic Navigation Academy's newest training ship Stellar Dawn drifts silently through the void, its sleek hull reflecting distant starlight. Inside the bridge, 4 alien cadets stare at their control panels with growing panic. The ship's advanced AI navigation system has failed completely, leaving them stranded in an unmapped region of space. Commander Vex, a tall reptilian from the Saurian Empire, tries to maintain composure as he addresses his mixed crew. His scales shimmer with nervous energy as sweat beads form along his neck ridges. "Status report," he commands, though his voice wavers slightly. "Pilot." Kira, a blue-skinned humanoid from the water world of Aquanus, shakes her head in frustration. Her webbed fingers dance across the holographic displays, but every navigation system shows the same red error messages. All quantum positioning arrays are down. The stellar mapping database is corrupted. We have no idea where we are. Engineer. Bolt, a stocky rock-like being from the mineral-rich planet Pitra, pounds his granite fist against the nearest console. Sparks fly from the impact, but the systems remain dead. These human-designed backup systems are ancient. Nobody uses them anymore. They're too primitive for modern space travel. Communications Officer Neem, a slender insectoid with compound eyes that reflect the bridge's emergency lighting, clicks his mandibles anxiously. "I've sent distress signals on all frequencies, but we're too far from any known shipping lanes. The nearest patrol ship is weeks away, assuming they even receive our transmission." The cadets had been on a routine navigation exercise, testing their skills in a safe region of space near the Academy. Their mission was simple: plot a course through an asteroid field using the ship's advanced automated systems, then return. To base, everything had gone according to plan until they encountered an unexpected electromagnetic storm that fried their primary navigation computers. Now, they face a terrifying reality. Without their AI guidance systems, they are completely lost in the vast emptiness of space. Their food supplies will last maybe 2 weeks. Life support systems are functioning, but the psychological pressure is already taking its toll. Vex studies the star charts displayed on the emergency screens. Unlike the 3-dimensional holographic maps they're used to, these flat displays show only basic stellar positions. The interface looks ancient by their standards, with simple buttons and switches instead of gesture controls and neural links. These primitive systems make no sense, he mutters. Kira tries to work with the backup navigation tools, but her training focused entirely on automated systems. She understands the theory of manual navigation, but has never actually used it. How did beings ever find their way through space without quantum computers? She wonders aloud. The ship's emergency protocols have activated, rationing power and adjusting life support to extend their survival time. Emergency lighting casts eerie shadows across the bridge as the 4 aliens struggle with equipment that seems impossibly crude compared to their usual technology. Bolt examines the mechanical backup systems with growing frustration. "Look at this," he says, pointing to a collection of physical instruments built into the navigation station. Star charts printed on actual paper. A device for measuring angles between celestial objects. Tools that require manual calculation. It's like something from a museum. Nim continues monitoring communication channels, hoping for any sign of rescue. His sensitive antennae pick up faint signals from distant civilizations, but nothing close enough to help. "There's something strange about this region of space," he reports. "I'm detecting unusual background radiation that might explain why our modern systems failed." As hours pass, the reality of their situation becomes clear. They are truly lost, with no way to determine their position or plot a course home. Their advanced education taught them to rely completely on artificial intelligence and automated systems. None of them possess the basic skills needed for manual navigation. The ship's computer, operating on backup power, provides constant reminders of their deteriorating situation. Fuel levels, food supplies, and life support status flash on screens. Throughout the bridge, time is running out, and their options are limited. Vex makes a difficult decision. We need to activate the ship's emergency beacon and hope someone picks up the signal. Maybe an old cargo hauler or mining vessel will have the knowledge we lack. As they settle in for a long wait, none of the cadets realize that help is already closer than they think. Deep in the ship's lower decks, in a small cabin that most crew members never visit, an elderly human sits quietly reading an actual paper. Book. His name is Jack, and he has been traveling through space longer than any of them have been alive. Soon, their survival will depend on skills they never learned and knowledge they never valued. 3 days into their crisis, the alien cadets have grown desperate. Food rations taste like dust in their mouths, and the constant hum of failing systems reminds them that time is running out. The bridge has become a place of quiet despair as they wait for rescue that may never come. Commander Vex paces between workstations, his scales now dull with stress. We should try sending another distress signal, he suggests for the 100th time, though they all know it's pointless. That's when they hear footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy, measured steps that don't match the quick, nervous movements of their crew. The bridge door slides open with a soft hiss, and an elderly human enters. Jack appears to be in his 70s, with silver hair and deep lines around his eyes that speak of decades spent staring into the void of space. He wears a simple gray jumpsuit, the kind maintenance workers use, and carries an old leather bag that looks older than some of the cadets. His movements are slow but purposeful, like someone who has learned patience through long experience. Heard, you folks might need some help, Jack says in a calm voice, his accent unfamiliar to the aliens. He doesn't seem impressed by their crisis or worried about their situation. The 4 cadets stare at him in confusion. They knew there was a human aboard their ship, but he worked in the lower decks maintaining old backup systems. None of them had ever spoken to him before. You're just a maintenance worker, Bolt says dismissively. What could you possibly do that we cannot? Jack chuckles softly and sets his bag down on the navigation table. Well, I suppose that depends on what kind of help you need. He looks around the bridge, taking in the dead screens and flashing error messages. Navigation trouble? Kira waves her hand at the useless displays. All our positioning systems are down. The quantum arrays are fried. We have no idea where we are or how to get home. Ah, Jack nods knowingly. Modern technology works great. Until it doesn't. He opens his leather bag and begins pulling out items that make the aliens gasp in surprise. First comes a device they don't recognize, a circular metal instrument with moving parts and tiny markings. Then he produces what looks like an ancient star chart printed on actual paper, covered with hand-drawn notes and calculations. Finally, he sets down a small telescope, its brass surface worn smooth by countless hands. These are museum pieces, Nim says, his compound eyes reflecting his amazement. Antiques from the early space age? Museum pieces that work, Jack corrects gently. He unfolds the star chart and spreads it across the table. Been using these tools for 50 years. Never let me down yet. Vex approaches cautiously. You know how to navigate without computers. Son, I was finding my way through space before your people invented quantum positioning. Jack picks up the circular instrument, which he calls a sextant. This little beauty can tell you exactly where you are, as long as you can see the stars. The aliens exchange glances of disbelief. How could such primitive tools possibly work? When their advanced systems had failed, Jack moves to the main viewport and peers out at the starfield. First thing we need to do is figure out where we are. He raises the sextant to his eye and begins taking measurements, comparing the angles between different stars. "What are you doing?" Kira asks, fascination overcoming her skepticism. "Celestial navigation," Jack explains without lowering his instrument. "Same principles ships used on Earth's oceans centuries ago. You measure the angles between known stars, do some calculations, and you can pinpoint your location." Bolt shakes his head. "That's impossible. Space is three-dimensional and constantly moving. Stars shift position based on your velocity and location. The calculations would be incredibly complex." "Complex, yes. Impossible, no." Jack makes a note on his paper chart. "Your computers made it look easy, but the math has always been there. Humans just had to learn to do it the hard way." For the next hour, Jack works methodically, taking measurements and making calculations by hand. The aliens watch in growing amazement as he fills pages with numbers and diagrams. His methods seem impossibly crude, yet he works with the confidence of someone who has done this thousands of times. "There," Jack finally announces, marking a spot on his chart. "We're here. About 40 light years from your academy, in the outer spiral region." The cadets stare at the simple pencil mark on paper. After days of panic and despair, their location has been reduced to a tiny dot on an old chart. "You're certain?" Vex asks. Jack nods. "As certain as I can be without a quantum. Computer to double-check my work." He begins packing away his instruments. Now comes the hard part, getting you home. The next morning finds the bridge transformed into an unlikely classroom. Jack has spread his charts across every available surface, and the 4 alien cadets sit around him like students attending their first lesson. The emergency lighting has been replaced with normal illumination, giving everyone hope for the first time in days. Navigation isn't just about knowing where you are, Jack explains, pointing to various symbols on his star chart. It's about understanding where you're going and how to get there safely. He traces a route with his finger, showing a path that winds between star systems, rather than taking the direct approach their computers would have chosen. See these red marks? Those are hazards, radiation fields, gravitational anomalies, areas where ships have gone missing. Your fancy AI probably stored this information, but when it died, you lost access to centuries of hard-earned knowledge. Kira leans forward, studying the hand-drawn notations. How do you remember all of this? Practice, Jack says simply. And these? He taps the margins of the chart, which are filled with tiny notes in his careful handwriting. Every pilot I've ever met, every space station I've visited, every dangerous situation I've survived, it's all written down here. Bolt examines one of Jack's instruments with new respect. This sextant must be incredibly precise to work in three-dimensional space. Precise enough, Jack agrees. But the real precision comes from understanding what you're measuring. He demonstrates how to use the device, explaining how the angles between stars reveal their position in space. Your people learned to let machines do the thinking. Humans had to keep the knowledge in their heads. Over the following hours, Jack begins teaching them the basics of manual navigation. He shows them how to identify key stars and constellations, how to account for the ship's movement through space, and how to plot a course using only mathematics and observation. The learning process proves frustrating for the aliens. Vex struggles with the manual calculations, his claws making it difficult to write precise numbers. This would take our computers nanoseconds, he complains after spending an hour on equations. Your computers aren't here, Jack reminds him gently. But your brain is, and that's all humans ever had. Nim finds the star identification challenging with his compound eyes, which see light differently than human vision. Jack patiently helps him adapt the techniques, showing how different species can use the same principles with their unique biology. The beautiful thing about celestial navigation, Jack explains, is that it works for anyone. Doesn't matter if you have 2 eyes or 1,000 scales or skin, as long as you can see the stars and do basic math. As they practice, Jack shares stories from his decades of space travel. He tells them about the early days of human expansion, when ships traveled between stars with nothing but courage and paper charts. He describes navigation disasters where entire fleets were lost because they relied too heavily on technology, and miraculous rescues where old-school navigators saved thousands of lives. Humans made a lot of mistakes learning to travel in space, Jack admits. But we wrote those mistakes down, learned from them, passed the knowledge to the next generation. Every star chart tells a story of someone who survived long enough to share what they learned. Kira attempts her first solo navigation fix, using the sextant to measure star positions while Jack watches patiently. Her webbed fingers shake slightly as she makes the delicate adjustments, but she manages to complete the calculation. "How did I do?" she asks nervously. Jack checks her work against his own measurements. Off by about half a light year. Not bad for a first try. "Half a light year?" Vex exclaims. "That's a huge error." "It's accurate enough to get us home," Jack says calmly. Perfect navigation is a luxury. Survival navigation just needs to be good enough. By the end of the day, all 4 cadets have successfully taken star sights and calculated their position. Their results vary widely, but each falls within acceptable margins for manual navigation. More importantly, they begin to understand the logic behind the ancient methods. "I'm starting to see why humans dominated early space exploration," Bolt admits reluctantly. When technology fails, knowledge and skill become the most valuable resources. Jack begins plotting their course home, involving the cadets in every decision. He shows them how to balance fuel consumption against travel time, how to avoid known hazards, and how to build safety margins into their calculations. "We'll take the long way home," he announces, marking their route on the main chart. 5 jumps instead of 2, but we'll hit systems where we can refuel and resupply. Better to arrive late than not at all. As the ship's engines come online for their first jump, the aliens feel a new confidence. They're no longer helplessly lost in space. 2 days into their journey home, disaster strikes again. The ship drops out of hyperspace unexpectedly, alarms blaring throughout the bridge. Emergency lights bathe everything in red as the crew scrambles to understand what went wrong. Navigation computer is completely dead, Kira reports, her voice tight with panic. The jump calculations were corrupted mid-flight. We could be anywhere. Bolt checks the engine readings with growing concern. Hyperdrive is overheating. We pushed it too hard trying to compensate for the navigation errors. We need to shut down for at least 6 hours to let it cool. Vex looks around desperately. "Where's Jack?" "Here," comes the calm voice from the rear of the bridge. The old human emerges from the equipment lockers, carrying his leather bag and wearing the same patient expression he always has. "Heard the excitement up here. Our navigation failed again," Nim explains, his mandibles clicking anxiously. "We don't know where we are, and we can't jump until the engines cool down." Jack nods and begins unpacking his instruments. Sounds like a job for the old ways. He pauses and looks at the 4 cadets. "Unless you'd like to try it yourselves?" The aliens exchange nervous glances. They've been practicing with Jack's tools for days, but this is their first real emergency. The difference between classroom exercises and actual survival feels enormous. "We'll try," Vex says finally, his voice uncertain but determined. Jack smiles and steps back. "Good. I'll be right here if you need help." Kira takes the sextant with trembling hands and moves to the main viewport. The starfield outside looks completely unfamiliar, with none of the landmarks they've been learning to recognize. "I don't see any of our reference stars," she admits. "That's okay," Jack encourages. "Use what you can see." Every star is a reference point if you know how to use it. Under Jack's gentle guidance, the four cadets begin working together. Vex handles the mathematical calculations while Kira takes star measurements. Bolt operates the manual controls for the observation instruments, and Nem monitors their communications equipment for any helpful signals. The process takes much longer than it would have with Jack doing the work alone. Kira struggles with the sextant readings, taking measurements 3 times before getting consistent results. Vex makes calculation errors and has to start over twice. But gradually, they begin to piece together their location. "I think we're in the beta sector," Nim announces after identifying several familiar star patterns. "About 60 light years off our planned course." Jack checks their work carefully, finding only minor errors in their calculations. "Close enough for navigation purposes," he confirms. "Good work. But their problems aren't over." As they plot a new course home, they discover they're dangerously low on fuel. The failed jump consumed more power than expected, and they don't have enough energy for a direct route back to the academy. "There's a mining station in this sector," Bolt says, studying Jack's charts. "But it's controlled by the Frontier Guild. They're not exactly friendly to Galactic Academy ships." Jack examines the route options. Sometimes you have to choose between pride and survival. The Guild miners are rough, but they're honest. They'll sell us fuel if we can pay. As they approach the mining station, they encounter another challenge. The station's automated docking system requires modern navigation codes that their damaged computer can't provide. They'll have to dock manually using only visual references and thruster control. "I've never done a manual docking," Kira admits, staring at the massive industrial structure ahead of them. Asterisk. "Neither have most pilots these days," Jack says. "But it's just like parallel parking, except in 3 dimensions." He talks her through the process step by step, explaining how to judge distances and angles without computer assistance. The other cadets help by calling out observations and monitoring their approach speed. The docking attempt is nerve-wracking. The ship drifts slowly toward the station, while Kira makes tiny adjustments with the thrusters. Several times they have to back off and try again as she learns to compensate for the station's rotation. "Steady," Jack murmurs. "Trust your eyes, not your fear." Finally, with a gentle bump, they connect to the docking port. Cheers fill the bridge as the aliens celebrate their first successful manual docking. The mining station crew proves helpful, selling them fuel and supplies at fair prices. More importantly, they share current navigation data about hazards and route changes in the surrounding sectors. "You folks are lucky to have an old-timer aboard," the station chief tells them. "Most ships these days would be scrap metal without their computers." As they prepare to leave the station, the cadets realize they've gained more than just navigation skills. They've learned to work together under pressure, to trust their own abilities, and to value knowledge that can't be deleted by a computer malfunction. "Ready for the final jump home?" Jack asks. "Ready," Vex responds, and for the first time, he truly means it. Asterisk, the Galactic Navigation Academy appears on their view screen like a welcome beacon in the darkness of space. After 8 days of manual navigation and careful jumps, the familiar sight of the training facility brings tears to several alien eyes. The massive station rotates slowly against the backdrop of stars, its docking bays filled with sleek training, vessels that represent the pinnacle of modern space technology. "Home," Kira whispers, her webbed hands pressed against the VIEWPORT. Their approach to the academy creates quite a stir. Controllers in the traffic center struggle to understand how the Stellar Dawn managed to return without functional navigation. Computers. Emergency response teams scramble to assist what they assume must be a damaged vessel limping home. "Academy control to Stellar Dawn," comes the voice over their communication system. You've been missing for over a week. What's your status? Vex takes the communication with newfound confidence. Academy Control. This is Commander Vex. We experienced complete navigation system failure, but managed to return using manual navigation techniques. Requesting normal docking procedures. There's a long pause before the controller responds. Manual. Navigation? Please confirm. Are you saying you found your way home without computer assistance? That's correct, Vex replies. We had help from our human crew member. As they dock at the Academy, news of their return spreads quickly. Within hours, their story becomes the talk of the entire facility. Students and instructors alike gather to hear how 4 alien cadets learned to navigate using tools that most consider obsolete. Admiral Track, the Academy's director, personally comes to debrief them. The elderly Vulcan official listens with growing amazement as they describe their experience. You're telling me that a human maintenance worker taught you celestial navigation in less than a week? Jack isn't just a maintenance worker, Bolt corrects respectfully. He's a master navigator with 50 years of experience. We were foolish to dismiss him because of his job title. The Admiral examines Jack's star charts and instruments with a reverence usually reserved for ancient artifacts. These techniques haven't been taught at the Academy for decades. We assumed they were unnecessary in the age of quantum computers. Jack sits quietly through most of the debriefing, letting the cadets tell their story. When asked for his perspective, he simply says, "They did all the hard work. I just reminded them that intelligence doesn't require electricity." The Academy's response to their adventure proves swift and comprehensive. Within days, new courses are added to the curriculum covering manual navigation techniques. Jack finds himself promoted from maintenance worker to instructor, much to his amusement. 50 years I've been trying to retire, he tells the cadets with a chuckle. Now they want me to teach full-time. The 4 alien cadets become celebrities, of sorts, among their classmates. Their experience demonstrates something that many in their generation had forgotten, that technology is a tool, not a replacement for knowledge, and Skill.nim discovers a natural talent for teaching the new navigation. Courses to younger students. His compound eyes actually provide advantages in star identification that even Jack hadn't considered. Different species see the universe differently, he explains to his classes. But the stars are there for everyone. Kira applies her new skills to her pilot training, becoming one of the few cadets who can actually fly manually when required. Her instructors note a new confidence in her abilities that extends far beyond navigation. Bolt incorporates manual backup systems into his engineering projects, designing ships that can function even when their primary computers fail. Redundancy, he calls it, a human approach to problem solving. Vex shows perhaps the most dramatic change. The reptilian commander who once dismissed primitive human methods now advocates for their inclusion in standard training. A good officer must be prepared for any situation, he tells his fellow cadets. Technology will eventually fail. Knowledge endures. The Academy establishes a new wing dedicated to traditional navigation methods, with Jack's star charts displayed prominently in the main hall. Students from dozens of species come to learn techniques that humans developed centuries ago. But perhaps the most important change is an attitude. The alien cadets learned that wisdom doesn't always come from the newest technology or the most advanced computers. Sometimes it comes from patient teachers with old tools and hard-earned experience. Jack continues to work quietly in his small cabin, maintaining the backup systems that everyone now realizes are essential. His leather bag of instruments has been copied and distributed to ships throughout the galaxy. But he still prefers his original tools, worn smooth by decades of faithful service. Humans aren't the smartest species in the galaxy, he tells new students during his first official lecture. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're stubborn. When something doesn't work, we find another way. When technology fails, we fall back on knowledge. That's what makes us useful out here, among the stars. The four cadets never forgot their week lost in deep space, or the human who brought them home. They carried those lessons throughout their careers, becoming advocates for the old ways in a universe increasingly dependent on artificial intelligence. Sometimes they learned the most advanced solution is also the simplest one. Asterisk.